The first time they called, I thought it was a scam. A man's voice, too smooth, too practiced, slid through my phone speaker while I stood in the checkout line at the grocery store with a carton of eggs and a bag of oranges balanced against my hip. "Miss Denise Walker?" he asked. "Yes," I said, already annoyed, already tired. "I'm calling in reference to your past due auto loan. This is your final notice before repossession." The word repossession didn't make sense in my life. It sounded like something that happened to other people, people who didn't budget, people who didn't check their accounts twice, people who didn't line up bills on the kitchen table and pay them like prayer. "I don't have an auto loan," I said, keeping my voice calm, because I refused to give strangers the satisfaction of hearing me flinch. He didn't pause. "Ma'am, we have a loan in your name for a 2022 Nissan Altima. Payment has not been received in 3 months. The address on file is..." And then he said my address. My stomach tightened so fast I almost dropped the eggs. I stepped out of the line, pushing my cart to the side like it suddenly didn't belong to me. The fluorescent lights felt too bright. The grocery store music, some soft, cheerful old song, felt like an insult. "You have the wrong person," I said, but my voice had changed. Not loud, just thinner. "Ma'am," he replied, still smooth, "I can verify the last 4 of your social security number." He said it correctly. My mouth went dry. For a second I couldn't hear anything else. Not the cashier calling out, not the carts rolling, not the hum of the freezers. Just the sound of my own pulse in my ears. "I didn't buy any Nissan," I whispered. There was a tiny pause this time, the first crack in his script. "Then you need to file an identity theft report," he said. "Because as far as our records show, you signed." I stood there in aisle 7 with my phone pressed to my ear, oranges sweating in the cart, and felt something cold move through my chest. Not panic. Not yet. More like disbelief that my life could be touched like that without my permission. I went home, put the groceries away with shaking hands, and sat at my kitchen table in the quiet. The air smelled like dish soap, and the lemon candle I light when I want my house to feel peaceful. I called the number back, asked for the account details, and wrote them down on a sticky note that kept curling at the corners like it didn't want to hold this kind of truth. Loan number, lender name, vehicle VIN, dealer location. Every line felt like someone else's life. Then the representative said something that made my throat close. "Ms. Walker, the vehicle was purchased 9 months ago." 9 months. I stared at the wall across from my table where a framed photo of my mother hung. Smiling, head tilted, eyes warm like she could still calm me just by looking. 9 months ago, I was helping my sister move out of her apartment after she swore she was starting over. 9 months ago, I was the one who boxed her dishes, carried her laundry baskets, and let her sit at my table crying into a mug of tea while she told me, "I just need one person to believe in me." I swallowed, because somewhere deep down, a thought rose up that I didn't want to name. And the scary part wasn't the thought itself. It was how quickly my body recognized it. Before all of this, my life was ordinary in a way I worked hard to protect. I'm 48 years old, and I'm the kind of woman who finds comfort in routines. I'm not rich, not flashy. I work as an administrative coordinator at a small community college. I like the quiet hum of office printers, the smell of fresh paper, the predictable rhythm of semesters starting and ending. My son Marcus is grown, 26, and living in another state now. He calls me every Sunday like clockwork. Not because I demand it, but because somewhere along the way I taught him that love isn't just a feeling. It's a habit. My apartment isn't big, but it's clean. It smells like cinnamon when I bake, and like lavender detergent when the laundry's fresh. I have one small balcony where I keep 2 plants alive out of pure stubbornness. Peace is my favorite thing, and I've learned you don't get peace by accident. You get it by choosing it over and over again. My sister Keisha has always lived differently. She's 45, 3 years younger than me, and she has a way of moving through life like the rules are suggestions meant for other people. She's charming, funny, quick with a compliment when she wants something, quick with tears when she's cornered. Growing up, my mother used to call me the steady one. "Denise is my anchor," she'd say, patting my shoulder like stability was a gift. And Keisha was the spark. "She just needs time." My mother would say whenever Keisha got in trouble at school or came home late or borrowed money and forgot to pay it back, "She'll settle down." But the truth is, sparks don't always settle. Sometimes they burn. After our mother passed 4 years ago, the space she used to fill in our family didn't just become empty. It became exposed. The kind of exposed that makes old patterns louder. I tried to keep my boundaries with Keisha. I really did. But boundaries are harder when the person crossing them shares your childhood, shares your mother's face, shares the inside jokes you can't explain to anyone else. And when Keisha showed up at my door last year with puffy eyes and 2 suitcases, saying she'd been evicted because her landlord was heartless, I did what I always did. I opened the door. Just for a little while, I told myself. Just until she got her feet under her. Just until she found work. Just until. I can hear my own voice now and I know how it sounds. Like the beginning of a lesson I should have learned sooner. But back then it felt like love. Keisha slept on my couch for 3 months. She left makeup wipes in my bathroom trash and drank my coffee creamer like it was hers. She talked big about new beginnings and finally doing right. Every now and then she'd ask small favors. "Can I use your printer?" she'd say, smiling. "I'm applying for jobs. Can I borrow your laptop for a minute?" she'd ask, flipping her hair back. "My phone's acting up." Once she asked for my social security number. Not directly, not in a way that sounded like theft. She asked like it was normal. "I'm filling out this rental assistance thing," she said one night, sitting at my kitchen table while I washed dishes. "They need a household member list. What's your social?" "It's just for the form." I remember pausing, plate in my hand, soap suds sliding down my wrist. Keisha laughed lightly. "Girl, don't look at me like that. It's not like I'm gonna open a credit card." I gave it to her. I told myself it's my sister. And that's the thing people don't talk about enough, how betrayal doesn't always kick the door down. Sometimes it walks in because you already gave it a key. After that first collection call, I tried to be rational. Identity theft happens. People steal mail. Data gets leaked. It could have been anyone. So I pulled my credit report that night. The glow of my laptop lighting up my kitchen like a quiet interrogation room. My hands were steady at first. Then I saw it. A new auto loan. In my name. Opened through a dealership 1 county over. Monthly payment. More than I would ever agree to. And then the part that made my throat close completely. The address listed wasn't mine. It was Keisha's last known address, her old apartment complex. I stared at the screen so long my eyes started to burn. My body wanted to leap straight into anger. But my heart tried to protect the story I'd always told myself. Keisha wouldn't do that. She's messy, but she's not evil. She loves me. I sat in that quiet kitchen listening to the refrigerator hum and the distant sound of somebody's TV through the wall, and I realized something about love. Love doesn't always stop people from hurting you. Sometimes love is the reason they think they're allowed. I didn't call Keisha that night. I didn't want to accuse her without proof. But I did something else. I opened a notebook and wrote the date at the top of a clean page. Then I wrote every detail I had, the calls, the loan number, the address, the dealership. I didn't know it yet, but I was starting a paper trail. And once you start writing things down, the truth has a way of getting braver. The next morning, I went to work like I hadn't just discovered a stranger-sized hole punched through my life. That's what steady people do. We keep moving because stopping feels like giving in. The campus parking lot was damp from an early rain, and my shoes squeaked faintly on the waxed hallway floors as I walked to my office. The copier was already humming. Someone had burned toast in the break room, and the smell floated down the hall like a small domestic mistake. Normally, those little details comfort me. They remind me that life is still happening. That morning, they felt like background noise to a thought I couldn't turn off. Keisha's old address is on my auto loan. I answered emails. I scheduled meetings. I smiled at coworkers and asked about their kids like I always do. But inside I kept replaying the last year. Every time Keisha sat at my table, every time she asked for just one thing, every time I brushed off that pinch of discomfort in my gut as suspicion I didn't want to carry. Around noon I called Marcus. Not because I wanted to worry my son, but because there are moments when you need to hear a voice that belongs to truth. He answered on the second ring. "Hey, Mom." "Hey, baby," I said, and my voice almost broke on the word baby because mothers don't want their children to feel how scared they are. "You okay?" he asked immediately. Marcus has always been sensitive in the best way. He notices tones people think they're hiding. I'm okay, I lied. Then I corrected myself. I'm not really. Something weird happened. I told him about the collection call, the loan, the credit report. There was a long pause on the line, and I could almost hear his thoughts moving. Mom, he said finally, voice lower, do you think Aunt Keisha did it? My throat tightened. I don't know, I said, and that was the truth I could manage. But her address is on the paperwork. Marcus exhaled sharply. She's done some messed up stuff, but a whole car? I know, I whispered. What are you gonna do? He asked. That question sat heavy on my tongue because the answer wasn't just about a car. It was about who I was willing to be inside my family. I'm going to find out, I said. And I'm going to handle it the right way. Marcus was quiet a second. Don't try to handle it alone, he said. And don't let her cry you out of your own boundaries. I almost laughed, soft and sad. When did you get so grown? When I watched you carry people on your back, he said simply. That did something to my chest. Not pain. More like a small warming reminder that I wasn't invisible. That someone saw how hard I tried to be fair. When we hung up, I sat at my desk staring at my calendar until the numbers blurred. The rest of the day, I moved like a woman holding glass, careful, controlled, trying not to shatter in public. After work, I drove home slowly, hands tight on the wheel. And that's when I saw it. A silver Nissan Altima turned into the complex across the street from my apartment building. It wasn't parked where I could study it for long. It moved too quickly, slipping into a spot near the back like it didn't want to be noticed. But I saw the temporary tag in the back window. Bright white paper, knew. And something in my body, the animal part, knew before my mind could explain why. I parked and sat in my car for a full minute, watching through my windshield. A woman stepped out. Not Keisha. Younger. Slim. Long nails. A phone pressed to her ear while she laughed at something, head thrown back like she didn't have a worry in the world. She walked into the building across the street and disappeared. I didn't follow her. I didn't take a picture. I just sat there with my hands gripping the steering wheel until my fingers started to ache. Because seeing that car, seeing something real and physical tied to my name, made it harder to tell myself this was a mistake. When I finally went inside, the first thing I did was check my mailbox. There was a thick envelope inside, addressed to me in bold print. I recognized the logo immediately. One of those finance companies with crisp letters and two friendly slogans. My stomach dropped. I carried it upstairs like it weighed 50 pounds. Inside my apartment, the air smelled like yesterday's cleaner and the faint lavender from my laundry. My living room looked the same. Throw blanket folded, pillows fluffed, a small bowl of mints on the coffee table. Normal. Safe. But my hands were shaking as I opened the envelope. It was a notice of delinquency. In my name. With my social security number partially printed at the top like a threat. I sat down slowly at the kitchen table, the same place Keisha used to sit asking for favors, and I stared at the paper until my eyes started to water. That was the first moment I allowed myself to feel angry. Not loud anger. Not screaming anger. The kind of anger that feels like heat under your skin, steady and clarifying. Because at that point it didn't matter who did it. My name was attached. And if I didn't move, I would pay for someone else's choices with my future. I pulled out my notebook and wrote the date again, then the words. Notice received in mail. Then I made a list of questions I needed answered. Who signed the loan documents? What ID was used? Where were the statements being sent? Who has the car now? How do I prove I didn't do this? And finally, the question I didn't want to write but had to. Did Keisha do it? I didn't call her that night either. Because I know my sister. If she was guilty, she'd cry. She'd shout. She'd accuse me of not loving her. She'd wrap the conversation in emotion so tightly I'd forget to ask for facts. So instead of calling Keisha, I called the lender. I sat with the notice in front of me and dialed, my voice as calm as I could keep it. After the usual automated maze, a woman came on the line. Thank you for calling, she said brightly. How can I help you? I need to request copies of the loan documents, I replied. The full application, signatures, and any ID provided. This account is not mine. There was a pause. You're claiming fraud? Yes, I said. The word felt sharp in my mouth. All right, she said, tone shifting into procedure. I can submit a fraud packet to your email. You'll need to file a police report and an identity theft affidavit. My stomach tightened, but I forced myself to stay steady. Send it. As she read off my email address to confirm, she added casually, and ma'am, just so you know, the co-borrower on the application is listed as Akeisha Johnson. My breath left my body like someone punched it out. For a moment I couldn't speak. The woman on the line asked, "Ma'am, are you still there?" I stared at the paper on my table, at my neat handwriting in the notebook, at the lemon candle that was still unlit because I hadn't even thought to reach for comfort. "Yes," I whispered. "I'm here. Would you like me to repeat the name?" the woman asked carefully. "No," I said, and my voice didn't shake anymore. It went quiet in a way that surprised me. "I heard you." When I hung up, my apartment felt different. Not dangerous, just exposed. Like the walls had been listening to my denial and finally decided to tell the truth anyway. I sat there a long time. The refrigerator hummed. A car alarm chirped somewhere outside and then stopped. The world went on. And all I could think was, my sister didn't just borrow my identity. She signed her name right next to mine. That meant she wasn't confused. She wasn't accidentally involved. She participated. I stood up, walked to the balcony door and pushed it open. Cool air hit my face. The sky was fading into evening, soft blue turning gray at the edges. Across the street, the silver Altima sat parked under a streetlight like it had always belonged there. I stared at it until my eyes burned. Then I did the one thing I'd been avoiding. I called Keisha. It rang twice before she answered, voice bright and careless. "Hey sis," she said. "What's up?" I held the phone tightly, my nails pressing into the case. "Keisha," I said softly, "why is your name on an auto loan in my name?" The silence on the other end wasn't long, but it was loud. Keisha didn't answer right away. I could hear her breathing light, shallow, like she pressed the phone against her cheek and was staring at the ceiling, searching for a lie that didn't sound like a lie. Finally, she let out a small laugh that felt too thin to be real. "Denise, what are you talking about?" she said. I stayed calm. Not because I felt calm, but because I knew Keisha's patterns the way you know weather. If I came in hot, she'd hide in the smoke. If I stayed cool, she'd have nowhere to run but the truth. "I'm talking about a 2022 Nissan Altima," I said quietly. "A loan. In my name. And the lender just told me your name is on the application." Keisha made a sound like she was offended. "Girl, no. That's no. Somebody's trying to scam you," she said quickly. "You know my name. Folks put names on anything." I looked out at the parking lot across the street. My eyes locked on that silver car like it was a confession sitting under a streetlight. "Keisha," I said, "don't do that. Don't talk to me like I'm slow." Her voice tightened. "I'm not. I'm asking you a straight question," I continued, slow and deliberate. "Why is your name connected to my loan?" The silence came again, heavier this time. Then her tone shifted, softened, sweetened, like syrup over something bitter. "Denise, I was gonna tell you," she said. My chest went cold. There are certain phrases that don't belong to innocent people. "I was gonna tell you. It's not what it looks like. You're making it a bigger deal than it is." I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them. "Tell me what?" I said. Keisha exhaled, dramatic. "Okay, look. I didn't do it like you're thinking. I didn't steal from you. I needed help." "Help buying a car in my name?" I asked, my voice still quiet. "It's not in your name like that," she said fast. "It was just to get approved. You know my credit been messed up since everything." Everything. That was her favorite word. It was always everything. A cloudy, vague enemy she could blame for choices she didn't want to own. "Whose car is it?" I asked. "It's mine," she admitted. The words hit me so cleanly my stomach turned. I gripped the balcony railing with one hand, the metal cool under my palm. "So you did it," I said. Keisha's voice rose just a little. "Denise, don't say it like that. I didn't do anything to you. I'm making the payments. You're 3 months behind." I cut in. She paused. I was gonna catch up. "Keisha." My voice cracked on her name, and I hated that it still carried love in it. "How did you sign for me?" "I didn't sign for you," she said too quickly. I went still. "Then how is it in my name, Keisha?" Another pause. Then she whispered, They had a thing where you can sign digitally. I stared at the silver Altima again, and my vision blurred slightly, not from tears yet, but from the way shock makes your eyes feel too full. Where are you right now? I asked. She hesitated. I heard a blinker clicking in the background, steady as a heartbeat. I'm out. In what car? I asked. Denise. In what car, Keisha? I repeated, and my voice had steel in it now. She didn't answer. That was answer enough. My throat tightened so hard I had to swallow twice. You're driving it, I said. Not a question. Keisha started crying then like my confirmation flipped a switch. Please don't do this, she sobbed. Please don't. I was desperate. I leaned my forehead against the balcony door frame. The wood was rough under my skin, grounding me. Desperate. I've heard that word my whole life from people who want forgiveness without accountability. Desperate becomes a blanket you throw over harm, hoping it will stop smelling like harm. Keisha, I said softly, you didn't just get help. You used my identity. I'm your sister, she cried. I thought you'd understand. You always understand. That line, the expectation inside it, made something in me ache. Because she wasn't crying for what she did to me. She was crying because I wasn't absorbing it like I always had. Did you use my social security number? I asked. She sniffed. I had to. Did you use a copy of my driver's license? I asked. She stopped. Then, you left it on the table before. I closed my eyes. I remembered it now. Months ago I'd set my wallet down while I cooked. Keisha had been at my table, filling out applications, papers spread out like she was building a future. I thought she was trying. She'd been collecting. How much is the monthly payment? I asked, my voice low. It's not that bad, she said, pleading. And once I get this job. How much? I repeated. She whispered the number. It was worse than I expected. I let the silence stretch, not to punish her, but because my body needed time to accept what my mind already knew. Then I asked the question that made her cry harder. Keisha, I said, did you ever plan to tell me? Yes, she sobbed. Yes. I just needed to get stable first. I didn't want you judging me. I stared at the sky, the evening light fading, and felt something heavy settle in me. It wasn't just anger. It was grief for the relationship I thought we had, sisters who could be messy, yes, but not dangerous to each other. If you didn't want me judging you, I said quietly, you shouldn't have made me responsible for your debt. She sniffed, voice sharpening through the tears. So what, you're gonna call the police on me? Over a car? Denise, that's cold. Cold. That was the word she chose, like my boundaries were cruelty. And in that moment I saw exactly what I was dealing with. Not just desperation but entitlement. I straightened. Keisha, listen to me. I am not yelling. I am not insulting you. I am giving you one chance to do the right thing. Her crying quieted, like she was listening for the offer inside my tone. You're going to meet me tomorrow, I said. You're going to bring every document you have, every email, every text from the dealership, the lender, the login information, everything. And you're going to tell me the truth from beginning to end. Keisha sniffed. Okay, I can do that. And you're going to stop driving that car. I added. What? She snapped, the tears drying up fast. Denise, be serious. How am I supposed to get to work interviews? You should have thought about that before you signed my name, I said, and my calmness surprised even me. Keisha's voice turned sharp again. You always act like you're better than me. I felt my chest tighten. This isn't about better. This is about safe. Safe, she mocked. It's a car note. It's my credit, I replied. It's my name. It's my future. Keisha breathed hard into the phone. Then she said low and bitter, so you're really gonna ruin me. There it was. Not I'm sorry I hurt you. Not how can I fix it. Just you're going to ruin me. I closed my eyes and heard my mother's voice in my head, the way she used to sound when she'd pull me into the kitchen and speak truth without raising it. Denise, she'd say, love doesn't mean you let folks break you and call it family. I opened my eyes. Keisha, I said softly, I didn't do this to you. Then I ended the call. My hand shook slightly as I lowered the phone, but my mind was already moving. I went back inside, locked my balcony door, and sat at my kitchen table with my notebook open like a witness. I wrote, Keisha admitted car is hers. Said she used my information. Said she's behind on payments. Then I wrote what I didn't want to write. She is not sorry. She is scared of consequences. I opened my email and found the fraud packet from the lender. Forms, instructions, a list of required documents. Police report. Identity theft affidavit. Copy of ID. Proof of address. It felt overwhelming until I remembered something I'd learned raising Marcus. You don't fix everything at once. You fix the next thing. So I did the next thing. I pulled my credit reports from all 3 bureaus and printed them. I placed them in a folder. I froze my credit one by one, listening to automated voices confirm like they were telling me the weather. Then I sat very still in my quiet apartment and let myself feel the heartbreak of it. Not heartbreak like romance. Family heartbreak. The kind that makes you question your own judgment, your own softness, your own loyalty. The lemon candle sat unlit on the counter. I lit it anyway, and the warm citrus scent rose into the room like comfort trying to show up late. Outside, through my window, I could still see the silver Altima across the street. Still there. Still parked like it belonged. And I realized tomorrow wasn't going to be about a sisterly conversation. Tomorrow was going to be about whether Keisha chose truth, or whether I had to choose it without her. Keisha showed up the next afternoon like she was coming to a birthday lunch. Not late. Keisha is rarely late when she thinks she can talk her way out of something, but dressed like she wanted to look put together. Big sunglasses. A fitted jacket. Lip gloss so shiny it caught the light every time she moved her mouth. We met at a little cafe near my job. The kind with soft jazz playing and tables so small you have to keep your elbows tucked in. The air smelled like espresso and cinnamon syrup, sweet enough to make you forget the world has sharp edges. I got there early and picked a corner table where I could see the door. When Keisha walked in, she smiled wide like she expected me to smile back, like my boundaries were just another mood of mine she could wait out. "Hey sis," she said, sliding into the seat across from me. "You look tired." I stared at her for a second, letting that sentence hang in the air. You look tired. As if tiredness was the problem, not what she did. "Did you bring the documents?" I asked. Keisha blinked, offended by the lack of small talk. "Dang, Denise. Good to see you too." "I'm serious," I said quietly. "Documents." She dug into her oversized purse and pulled out a folder, thin, wrinkled, like it had been shoved under a car seat. She set it on the table with a dramatic sigh. "There," she said. "I brought what I have." I didn't touch it right away. I looked at her face instead. At the way she kept adjusting her hair. At the way her knee bounced under the table like her body knew she was trapped. "Start from the beginning," I said. Keisha rolled her eyes toward the ceiling like she was asking God for patience. "Okay, look. I needed a car. You know that. I was tired of catching rides, tired of begging people. And you decided my identity was the solution," I replied. She leaned forward, voice low like she wanted the cafe to feel like a confessional booth. "Denise, I didn't do it to hurt you. I did it because I didn't have a choice." I held her gaze. "You always have a choice." Keisha's mouth tightened. Then she opened the folder and slid out a few papers. The top one was a dealership printout, vehicle details, a payment breakdown, signatures at the bottom. I picked it up carefully and looked. The signature line had my name on it. Not my handwriting. Not even close. My stomach turned but my voice stayed calm. "Who signed this?" Keisha shrugged too fast. "It was electronic. The guy at the dealership did most of it." "What guy?" I asked. She hesitated. "His name was, I don't know. Like, Tyler. Something." I leaned back slightly. "Keisha, don't lie to me about a man who helped you steal my identity. Give me the name." Her eyes flashed. Then she looked down at her nails. "Ramon," she muttered. "Ramon," I repeated. "Who is Ramon?" Keisha exhaled, annoyed. He's my friend." I watched her carefully. "Friend like friend? Or friend like the kind who's been sleeping on your couch, and eating your groceries and calling it love?" Her cheeks flushed. She lifted her chin. "Why you always gotta make it nasty?" "Because you made it criminal," I said softly. That word landed between us like a dropped plate. Keisha went quiet for a second, then tried to soften again. "Ramon just helped me. He knows people. He said the dealership wouldn't look too hard if I had good information." Good information. My information. I slid the paper back and flipped through the folder. There were copies of a driver's license, mine. The same photo, the same number. It looked like a scan pulled straight from the time Keisha borrowed my wallet, smiling and saying she just needed to check something. I swallowed. You used my license. Keisha's eyes got wet fast, her special skill, turning water on like a faucet. Denise, please. I was desperate. I stared at her tears and felt something in me harden. Not into cruelty but into clarity. Desperate doesn't mean entitled, I said. She sniffed, wiping her cheeks with the back of her hand. Okay, so what do you want me to do? I can catch up. I told you I can catch up. Catch up how? I asked. With what job? What income? What plan? I got interviews, she said quickly. And Ramon said he can. I held up a hand. Stop. Don't bring another man into this like he's your rescue boat. I want your plan. Keisha's mouth opened and closed once. Then her eyes narrowed. You want me to be honest? She asked, voice sharper. Yes, I said. I do. She leaned in and lowered her voice. My plan is you help me. Like you always do. My chest tightened, not because it surprised me, but because hearing it out loud felt like realizing a bruise has been there for years. I nodded slowly. So you didn't come here to fix it? Keisha scoffed, tears drying. I came here so you wouldn't call the police. There it was again. Not remorse. Just fear of consequences. I slid the folder toward myself and said, Where is the car right now? Keisha's eyes darted toward the window for half a second before returning to me. Parked. Why? Because I'm going to ask you to give it back, I said. Keisha laughed once, sharp. Give it back to who? Denise, you don't even want that car. I don't want the car, I said, voice steady. I want my name off the loan. Well, it's already done, she snapped. You can't just undo it like it's a mistake on a receipt. I looked at her. Yes, I can. It's called fraud. Her face twisted. You really about to do this to me? Keisha, I said softly. You already did it to you. She leaned back, crossing her arms like a teenager. So you gonna ruin me because I needed help? I shook my head slowly. No. I'm going to save myself because you didn't care enough not to harm me. Keisha's eyes flashed, and she started gathering the papers like she suddenly regretted bringing them. I placed my hand flat on the folder. Not aggressive, just firm. Leave those, I said. Why? She demanded. Because they're evidence, I replied. Her mouth fell open. Evidence? Denise, you're talking like I'm a stranger. You made yourself unsafe, I said quietly. That changes things. Keisha stood up so fast her chair scraped the floor, loud enough to make two people at the next table glance over. Her voice rose, sharp with humiliation. You think you so perfect, she hissed. Always got your little job, your little routines, your little I'm better than you face. I didn't flinch. I didn't raise my voice. I'm not perfect, I said. But I'm not a thief. That word hit her like a slap. Her face went red. She grabbed her purse. You always loved judging me, she snapped. You think Mama would be proud of you doing this to me? My chest tightened at my mother's name, but I held my ground. My mother would be proud of me protecting my future, I said. And she would be ashamed of you using family like a weapon. Keisha's eyes filled again, but this time the tears looked more like anger than sorrow. You ain't my sister, she whispered. I stood too slow and steady. No, I said softly. Right now, you're someone who committed a crime against me. Keisha stared at me like she couldn't believe I'd spoken the truth in public. Then she turned and walked out of the cafe, shoulders stiff, moving fast like she was trying to outrun the consequences that were finally gaining speed. I sat back down, my heart pounding, hands trembling slightly as the adrenaline drained. The cafe music kept playing. A barista called out an order. Somebody laughed at the counter. Life continued, indifferent. But I was changed. Because now I had confirmation in my bones, not just on paper. My sister did it and she wasn't going to fix it. I went to my car and sat behind the steering wheel for a moment, breathing through the tightness in my chest. Then I opened my Not Zero ebook and wrote. Keisha admitted car is hers. Named Ramon. Refused to surrender. Took papers back, kept some copies. I drove straight to the police station. The lobby smelled like disinfectant and tired air. A television murmured in the corner. A man argued softly with a clerk about a ticket, his voice rising and falling like waves. When it was my turn, I stepped up to the desk and said, calmly, "I need to file an identity theft report. My sister used my information to buy a car." The officer looked up, pen still. His eyes flicked over my face like he was trying to measure whether I'd changed my mind. "Your sister," he repeated. "Yes," I said. He nodded once, slow like he'd seen this kind of heartbreak before, and handed me the form. As I started filling it out, my hand shook. Not because I wasn't sure, but because I was. Because I knew the moment I turned my sister into a name on a police report, there would be no going back to the version of our relationship that depended on my silence. And still, I kept writing. The police station form asked for everything in boxes that felt too small for the kind of hurt I was carrying. Name of suspect, relationship, dates, amount, description of incident. I wrote, Keisha Johnson's sister. My pen hesitated over the line, the way your hand hesitates before signing something final. The plastic chair under me squeaked when I shifted. Somewhere behind the front desk, a phone rang and rang until someone picked it up with a sigh. The officer who took my report was middle-aged, tired-eyed, not unkind. His name tag said Harris. He looked down at my paperwork, then up at me. "You sure you want to do this?" he asked quietly. It wasn't judgment. It was recognition. Because everybody knows what it means to report family. You don't just turn in a person. You turn in a history. Childhood. Holidays. Private jokes. The version of loyalty you were raised to protect. I swallowed. My throat felt raw like I'd been breathing smoke. "Yes," I said. "Because if I don't, I'm the one who pays for it." Officer Harris nodded slow. "All right. I'm going to need any documents you have. Loan info, credit report, mail notices, anything with your name and the account number." "I have copies," I said. "And the lender is sending me the fraud packet." He slid a business card across the counter. "This is your report number. Keep it. You'll need it for the lender and credit bureaus." I took the card like it was a lifeline. Then he asked the question that stung. "Do you know where the vehicle is located?" I thought of the silver Altima across the street. The way it sat under the streetlight like it belonged. The way Keisha's silence on the phone had told on her before she ever spoke. "Yes," I said softly. "I've seen it." Officer Harris wrote something down. "Okay. A detective may follow up. And ma'am, you should also file a report through the Federal Trade Commission. identitytheft.gov. It creates an official affidavit that helps you dispute accounts." I nodded, absorbing it all like instructions after an accident. When I walked out of the station, the sun was low and warm, the kind of afternoon light that usually makes me want to go home and open the windows. Instead, I sat in my car with the report number in my hand and stared at it until the ink stopped swimming. Then I drove home and did what I always do when life tries to tip me over. I made a list. 1. FDC identity theft affidavit. 2. Fraud packet to lender. 3. Dispute with credit bureaus. 4. Call the dealership. 5. Protect my accounts. 6. Document everything Keisha says and does. I made myself a cup of tea even though I didn't want it. The kettle whistled, sharp and impatient. I watched the steam rise and tried to let the warmth in my hands calm the shaking in my chest. I opened my laptop and filed the FDC report first. The site walked me through it like a calm voice in a storm: dates, accounts, suspects, steps. When I clicked submit, a PDF affidavit generated with my name on it. For a second, I just stared at the page. Because it felt strange, my name attached to a government document that essentially said, "Someone wore me like a mask." I printed it and placed it in my growing folder. Then I filled out the lender's fraud packet. The questions were blunt in a way family betrayal never is. "Did you authorize this loan?" "No." "Do you know the person who may have done this?" "Yes." "Are you willing to cooperate with law enforcement?" "Yes." Each yes was a small grief. But I kept going. That evening, I called the dealership listed on the loan documents. A man answered, cheerful. "Sales department, this is Troy." "Troy," I said, keeping my voice steady. "My name is Denise Walker. There is a vehicle financed through your dealership in my name. I did not purchase that vehicle. I'm filing an identity theft claim and I need a copy of the buyer's order, And the ID that was used. There was a pause. The cheer drained out of his tone. He said. Ma'am, I don't know if we can release that information. I have a police report number, I replied. And an FDC affidavit. Another pause, papers rustling like he was covering the receiver to ask someone else what to do. Then, can you hold, ma'am? I held. The hold music was bright, almost insulting. I stared around my apartment while it played. My neat throw blanket, my clean counters, the lemon candle on the windowsill. A peaceful home can still be invaded. Eventually another voice came on, older, more cautious. This is Mr. Feldman, he said. I'm the finance manager. Can you tell me the last 4 of your social? I gave it. He exhaled slowly. All right, he said. I see the deal. Ma'am, if this is fraud, we will need your documentation. The bank that funded the loan is the primary contact, but we can provide records to law enforcement. I also need to know what ID was used, I said, because I didn't give anyone permission to use mine. He hesitated. There's a copy in the file. It appears to be yours. My mouth went dry. And who was present when it was signed? According to the file, he said carefully, there were 2 people. The buyer listed as Denise Walker and a co-buyer Keisha Johnson. My chest tightened. Did anyone verify my face? There was a beat. We verified an ID. I closed my eyes. An ID. Not a person. Not a face. Not the trembling in someone's voice when they signed their own name. Just paper. I thanked him and ended the call before my tone could crack. Then I did the next thing. I disputed the account with the credit bureaus one by one, uploading my police report, FDC affidavit, and the delinquency notice. Each site gave me a confirmation number like a small promise. We received your truth. By the time I finished, it was past 9, and my apartment felt too quiet. That's when my phone lit up. Keisha. I stared at her name until it stopped ringing. A second later, a text came through. So you really went to the police? Wow. Then another. You trying to send me to jail over a car? After everything I've been through. My fingers hovered over the screen, but I didn't respond. I took a screenshot and dropped it into a folder on my phone labeled evidence. Then another text. You always been jealous of me. Mama knew it too. That one hit low, aimed at the soft parts. I felt tears rise, but I blinked them back. I wouldn't let her rewrite my childhood just to excuse her crime. I didn't respond. 10 minutes later, my Aunt Sheila called. Aunt Sheila is my mother's older sister, the family historian, the one who keeps everybody's birthdays in her head and still calls me baby girl, even though I'm almost 50. Denise, she said, voice tight. Why Keisha calling me crying saying you trying to ruin her life? I closed my eyes and breathed in slowly. There it was. The public part starting. I kept my voice calm, gentle. Auntie, I said, Keisha bought a car in my name. I have collection calls, notices, and a police report. Aunt Sheila made a small sound. Half disbelief, half disappointment. No, Keisha wouldn't. She did, I said quietly. And she's behind on payments. They're threatening repossession. This is my credit, Auntie. This is my future. Aunt Sheila went silent for a long moment. I could hear her breathing, and in the background I heard the faint sound of a TV preacher. Somebody talking about blessings. Finally, Aunt Sheila said softer, Do you have proof? Yes, I replied. I do. Another silence. Then her voice changed, not harsh but steadier. Send it to me, she said. Because I'm not going to be out here arguing based on tears. My throat tightened. Relief washed through me so suddenly I almost cried. Okay, I whispered. I will. After we hung up, I sat on my couch and stared at the wall. Keisha had done what she always did when consequences arrived. She ran to family and tried to turn accountability into cruelty. That morning, I cleaned my kitchen like I could scrub the betrayal out of the grout. Hot water ran over my hands. The sponge squeaked against the counter. I wiped the same spot twice, not because it was dirty, but because my mind needed something repetitive to hold on to. When you're the steady one, people assume your steadiness is endless. Like you don't get scared. Like you don't get tired. Like you don't have moments where you want to sit on the floor and let life happen without you. But I didn't have that luxury. Not with my name hooked to a debt that could follow me for years. So I put on a plain blouse, pulled my hair into a low bun, and went to work with my folder tucked into my tote bag like a secret. The campus was bright and busy. Students laughing too loud, shoes scuffing across tile, someone's cheap cologne hanging in the hallway. I sat at my desk and tried to focus on schedules and emails, but every time my computer screen went quiet for a second, my mind filled the space with the same thought. How many times did she look me in the eye while she did this? Around 10:30 my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail. It buzzed again immediately. Same number. Something in my gut told me this wasn't Keisha. I stepped into the hallway near the vending machines, out of earshot, and answered. Ms. Walker? A man asked. Yes, I said, my voice careful. This is Detective Ramos with the fraud unit, he said. I'm following up on your identity theft report. My chest tightened, but there was relief too. Movement. Progress. Yes, I replied. Thank you for calling. He asked me to confirm details, how I discovered the loan, whether I had any paperwork, whether I could provide proof of my whereabouts on the purchase date. I was at work, I said quickly. I can get my time records. Good, he said. Also, do you have any texts or messages where your sister admits involvement? I thought of Keisha's texts. Wow. You went to the police. The voicemail threat at 2:17 a.m. Yes, I said. I saved everything. Don't delete anything, he repeated, same as Officer Harris. And don't warn her about investigative steps. Sometimes family tries to handle it privately, and it complicates evidence. I swallowed. Understood. Detective Ramos continued. We will likely request documentation from the lender and dealership. There's also the matter of the vehicle's current location. I've seen it, I said, voice low. Across from my apartment complex. There was a pause, keys tapping. If we confirm probable cause, we may attempt contact and recovery. But I want you to prepare yourself. Cases involving family can get messy socially. Messy socially. I almost laughed at that, but it came out as a sigh. It already is, I said. His tone softened slightly. I'm sorry. Keep doing what you're doing. Document dispute, protect your accounts. I'll be in touch. When I hung up, I stood there a moment staring at the vending machine lights. Chips, candy bars, little things people buy when life is simple. Then I went back to my desk and tried to work. By lunch, Aunt Sheila texted me. Send the proof. She's calling everybody. I waited until I was alone in my office. Then I emailed Aunt Sheila what I had: screenshots of the credit report, the delinquency notice, the lender's note showing Keisha's name on the application, and the police report number. My finger hovered over the send button for a second, because sending proof to family feels like admitting your family is now a courtroom. But I pressed send anyway. 5 minutes later my phone rang. Aunt Sheila. I answered softly. Hey, Auntie. Her voice was low, controlled, dangerous in the way older women get when their patience runs out. Baby, she said. I saw it. My throat tightened. Okay. Aunt Sheila exhaled. Keisha is wrong. And she knows she's wrong. I'm about to call her. I closed my eyes. Part of me wanted to stop her, to keep it quiet, to avoid the family storm. But another part of me knew. Keisha had been controlling the story with tears. Somebody needed to bring receipts into the room. Thank you, I whispered. Aunt Sheila made a small sound. Half love, half frustration. And Denise, don't let nobody guilt you. Your mama didn't raise you to be a doormat. When she hung up, I sat very still. The word doormat echoed in my mind. Because that's what Keisha always needed me to be. Soft enough to step on. Steady enough to hold her weight. Quiet enough not to complain. That evening after work I drove straight home, not to rest but to check. The silver Altima was still there, parked across the street under the same streetlight like it had claimed the spot. I sat in my car and watched it for a minute, breathing slow, heart thumping steady. Then I saw Keisha. She came out of the building across the street wearing leggings and a bright hoodie, moving fast. She had keys in her hand. Her hair was pulled into a high ponytail like she was ready to fight or run, either one. My stomach tightened so hard I almost felt sick. She didn't see me at first. She walked right up to the Altima, yanked the door open, and threw a bag onto the passenger seat. Then she looked up. Our eyes met through my windshield. For half a second, neither of us moved. Keisha's face tightened into something hard. Not shame. Not regret. Defiance. She marched across the street toward my car like she had every right to approach me. Like she didn't just commit fraud in my name and then blame me for reacting. I cracked my window halfway, just enough to speak, not enough to let her reach in. "Denise," she snapped, leaning down. Her breath smelled like peppermint gum in anger. "You really doing this?" I kept my voice low. "Get away from my car." She laughed sharp. "Oh, now you scared of me?" I stared at her. "I'm not scared. I'm finished." Keisha's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed sharp. "Aunt Sheila called me. She told me you sent her proof like you some detective. You out here embarrassing me." "You embarrassed yourself," I replied. Keisha's lips trembled, and for one tiny moment I thought I might see remorse. Then she said it, quiet, venomous. "You always hated seeing me have something." My chest tightened. "Keisha, this isn't yours. It's stolen." Her voice rose. "It's a car. You act like I killed somebody. Stealing isn't measured by what makes you feel better about it," I said, still calm. "It's measured by what it costs the person you stole from." Keisha's eyes darted around, and I realized she was watching to see who might be listening, who might be watching. Public matters to people who live by image. "Denise," she said, lowering her voice, switching strategies like she always did. "Just drop it. I'll give you money. I'll make the payments. You're already behind," I said. "And even if you caught up, I'd still have a loan in my name that I didn't agree to. That's not love. That's control." Her jaw clenched. "So you want me locked up?" I shook my head once slow. "I want my name back." Keisha stared at me like she didn't recognize the woman sitting behind the wheel. Because I wasn't the version of me who folded. I was the version of me who filed. Keisha backed away from the window like she suddenly realized she couldn't talk me out of this. Then she turned toward the Altima, yanked the door open and sat inside. But before she drove off, she lowered her window and said, loud enough for the street to hear, "You gonna die alone, Denise?" The words hit, but they didn't land the way she wanted. Because I finally understood the threat behind them. Keisha wasn't afraid I'd be lonely. She was afraid I'd be free. She drove off fast, tires crunching gravel, and I sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, breathing slow until my heartbeat stopped trying to climb out of my throat. Inside my apartment, I locked my door and stood in the quiet listening. The refrigerator hummed. My wall clock ticked. And then my phone buzzed. A text from Marcus. "Mom, Aunt Keisha called me. I told her don't involve me. You okay?" My throat tightened. I typed back. "I'm okay. I'm standing up. I love you." Then I opened my notebook and wrote one more line under today's date. Keisha confronted me in person. Made threats. Drove the vehicle away. I didn't know what the detective would do next. I didn't know how long the credit disputes would take. But I did know this. Keisha had officially taken this from private betrayal to public behavior. And public behavior has a way of meeting public consequences. The next day, I didn't wait for life to calm down. I moved like a woman who finally understood that peace isn't something you beg for. It's something you protect. Before I even left for work, I checked my credit again. Not because I enjoyed the anxiety of it, but because I needed to know if the Altima was the only wound or just the first one I'd noticed. The report loaded slowly, the little spinning circle on my laptop acting like it didn't understand urgency. Then it appeared. The auto loan was still there. But underneath it, there was a new hard inquiry dated 2 weeks ago. Another finance company. Another lender. My stomach dropped. I stared at that line until it felt like the letters were rearranging themselves. How many times? I opened my notebook and wrote, "New inquiry found. Possible additional fraud." Then I called the number listed beside the inquiry and asked calmly, "What account is this tied to?" The woman on the phone was kind but firm. "Ma'am, I can't discuss details without verification." "I can verify," I said, "but I need to know if a new loan or account was opened." There was typing on her end, then a pause. "It appears an application was started for an auto refinance," she said. "But it wasn't completed." Auto refinance. I closed my eyes. Not completed meant only one thing: somebody tried and might try again. At work I couldn't focus. The air in my office felt too thin. Every time my phone buzzed, my body tightened like it was bracing for another punch. Around mid-morning, Detective Ramos called again. "Ms. Walker," he said, "I need you to come in for a formal statement and bring your documentation. Also, can you provide proof of your whereabouts on the purchase date?" "Yes," I said quickly. "I was at work." "Can your employer verify?" he asked. "Yes," I replied. "Time records, security badge logs, everything." "Good," he said. "And one more thing, do you know who Ramon is?" My throat tightened. Hearing that name from law enforcement made it heavier. "I don't," I said. "My sister said he's a friend." Detective Ramos's voice stayed neutral. "We'll look into him. Sometimes these cases involve someone coaching the fraud." "I understand," I whispered. After I hung up, I walked straight to HR. The HR office smelled like toner and peppermint gum. A small fan hummed on the desk. I explained the situation as calmly as I could. Identity theft, a car loan, police report, need for attendance verification. The HR manager, Ms. Eldridge, listened with her eyebrows drawn together. "Oh, Denise," she said softly. "I'm so sorry. I just need documentation," I replied. "I'm trying to protect my credit." She nodded immediately and printed my time records for the purchase date, stamped and signed, then added a letter on official letterhead confirming I was on campus during business hours. As I took the pages, my hands trembled slightly, because there's a special kind of humiliation in needing an employer to confirm that you are you. That afternoon, I sat in the fraud unit office with Detective Ramos and gave my statement. Fluorescent lights buzzed softly above us. The chair was cold, the desk too clean. He asked questions that felt clinical. "Did you authorize your sister to use your information?" "No." "Did you provide your ID or social knowingly?" "I gave her my social for what she claimed was rental assistance paperwork," I admitted. "I didn't give permission for a car loan." "Do you have a history of lending her money?" he asked. I swallowed, cheeks heating. "Yes." He nodded like he'd expected it. "And has she had access to your mail?" "Yes," I said quietly. "She stayed with me for months." He wrote notes, then looked up. "Ms. Walker, I'm going to be honest. Family cases often turn into pressure campaigns. People may try to convince you to handle it privately." I stared at his pen moving. "They already are." He nodded. "Keep doing what you're doing. Keep things in writing." When I left, the sky was overcast and heavy. Rain threatened but didn't commit. The air smelled like wet pavement and car exhaust. My phone buzzed as I got into my car. A group text. "Family." Aunt Sheila had created it. One of those threads that starts with love and ends with pain. "Aunt Sheila. Family meeting tonight. 7 p.m. at my house. We need truth, not rumors." I stared at the message until my eyes burned. Part of me wanted to skip it. Stay in my apartment. Let the law handle it. But another part of me knew Keisha would use my absence as proof that I was lying or being dramatic. Silence is a blank screen people love to project onto. So I texted back. "Me? I'll be there." That evening, I walked into Aunt Sheila's living room and felt like I'd stepped into a courtroom disguised as family. The room smelled like fried chicken and lemon cleaner. The curtains were half drawn, letting in a dull gray light. Relatives sat on couches and folding chairs. My cousin Tori, my uncle James, 2 aunties from the church. Everyone's faces were tight with that mix of curiosity and concern people wear when they're waiting for somebody to be the villain. Keisha was already there, sitting on the couch like a victim. Her eyes were red, her arms crossed over her chest, Ramon nowhere in sight. She wore a hoodie pulled tight around her like armor, and when she saw me, she looked away dramatically, like she was the wounded one. Aunt Sheila stood near the fireplace, hands on her hips. "All right," she said. "We're here because Keisha called half the family crying, and Denise called the police. That's serious. So we're going to talk like grown folks." Keisha sniffed loudly. "I can't believe we even doing this." Aunt Sheila cut her eyes at her. "You can believe it. We're doing it." Then Aunt Sheila looked at me. "Denise, speak." My throat tightened, but I kept my posture straight. I didn't stand in the center like a performer. I just held my folder. "I didn't call the police because I wanted to hurt Keisha," I said calmly. "I called because there is an auto loan in my name for a car I didn't buy. I received collection calls. My credit report shows delinquency. The co-borrower listed is Keisha Johnson. Keisha shook her head, tears spilling again. I told you I was gonna pay it. Uncle James frowned. Keisha, is it true your name is on it? Keisha's mouth tightened. Aunt Sheila stepped forward, voice sharp. Answer the question. Keisha's shoulders slumped. Yes, she mumbled. But I was desperate. I opened my folder and pulled out copies, credit report, delinquency notice, lender's fraud packet confirmation, police report number. I handed them to Aunt Sheila first. She took them like she was taking a hot pan. She read quietly, lips moving slightly. Then she passed them to Uncle James. The room went still in that slow way, like the air was thickening with truth. Tori whispered, "Oh my God." Keisha started crying harder. Y'all don't understand. I was trying to get my life together. Aunt Sheila's voice cut through the tears like scissors. By ruining your sister's credit? Keisha looked around the room, desperate now. Denise don't even need it like that. She got her little job, her little. I held up my hand gently. Stop, I said, not loud but firm. My life isn't little. It's mine. And I worked hard for it. Keisha's eyes flashed. So you want me in jail? I shook my head slowly. I want you to take responsibility. But you don't get to steal from me, and then tell me how I'm allowed to respond. Aunt Sheila nodded once like she'd been waiting for that sentence. Uncle James sighed, deep and disappointed. Keisha, baby, why didn't you just ask for help the right way? Keisha snapped. Because y'all judge me. Aunt Sheila leaned forward. We judge theft. Yes, we do. The room stayed quiet, but something changed in that quiet. It wasn't everyone suddenly on my side. It was the lie losing oxygen. Keisha stood up abruptly, wiping her face with her sleeve. I'm done. I'm not sitting here being attacked. Aunt Sheila's voice stayed firm. You're not being attacked. You're being confronted. Keisha looked at me then. Eyes wet, face twisted with anger. You happy now? She hissed. I met her gaze and answered softly. No. I'm awake. Keisha grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming Aunt Sheila's front door so hard the picture frames on the wall rattled. In the silence after, Aunt Sheila exhaled slowly. Then she turned to me and said, gentler, Baby, I'm sorry she did you like this. My throat tightened. I nodded once. Thank you. Uncle James cleared his throat. What happens now? I looked down at the folder in my hands, paper, ink proof. Then I said the truth, plain and steady. Now we let the law do what family feelings couldn't. After the family meeting, I drove home with my shoulders tight and my jaw sore from holding back emotions all evening. The streets were slick from a light rain, and the headlights of oncoming cars smeared across my windshield like watery streaks. My hand stayed steady on the wheel, but inside I felt that familiar ache. The one that comes when the truth finally gets spoken out loud and you realize it can't be stuffed back into a quiet corner. When I got home, my apartment smelled like lemon candle and clean laundry. I should have felt safe. But betrayal has a way of following you in. Sitting on the edge of your couch, listening to your clock tick, making your own walls feel like they have thin spots. I set my folder on the table and checked my phone. 3 missed calls. All from Keisha. Then one text. You made me look like a criminal in front of everybody. I stared at it, then I typed delete it, typed again. In the end, I didn't respond. Because I realized something important. Keisha wasn't reaching out to repair anything. She was reaching out to regain control. I took screenshots, added them to my evidence folder, and put my phone face down. That night I slept in pieces. Every time I drifted off, I'd wake again with the same thought sitting heavy on my chest. What else did she touch? In the morning, I didn't wait for fear to finish its sentence. I called my bank and put a verbal alert on my profile. I changed passwords, email, banking, utilities, every login that connected to my name. I turned on 2-factor authentication, not because I suddenly became tech-savvy, but because I was learning the hard way that family isn't a security system. Then I called the lender again and asked for a status update on the fraud claim. The representative's voice was polite but firm. Ma'am, the investigation can take up to 30 days, she said. In the meantime, the account remains active. My chest tightened. So my credit keeps bleeding while you investigate? I understand your concern, she said, sounding like she'd said it 100 times before. But once fraud is confirmed, corrections can be made. Once fraud is confirmed, the problem with waiting for confirmation is that consequences don't wait politely. That afternoon, as I sat at my desk trying to concentrate on work, my phone buzzed with a new voicemail from an unknown number. I listened with my heart already sinking. "Ms. Walker," a man's voice said, curt and businesslike. "This is Recovery Solutions. We have an order to locate and repossess the 2022 Nissan Altima associated with your account. Please contact us to avoid escalation." My throat went dry. Repossession. That meant people could show up anywhere. My apartment lot, my job parking lot, and hook my car to a tow truck while I stood there trying to explain a betrayal that would sound like an excuse. I called Detective Ramos immediately and left a message with the new information. Then I called Ms. Holloway, no, not a lawyer this time. I called my coworker Holloway in HR, because I needed my workplace protected from a scene I didn't create. In my office, I spoke quietly, carefully. "There may be an attempted repossession connected to identity theft," I said. "If anyone calls asking for me, or looking for a vehicle in my name, I need to know right away." HR didn't ask questions beyond what mattered. They nodded, took notes, and promised to alert campus security. When I hung up, I stared at my computer screen and realized how deep this had gotten. Keisha didn't just take my identity. She pulled my name into a system that doesn't care about tears or childhood memories. Tow trucks don't care that she's my sister. Credit bureaus don't care that my mother used to pray for family unity. They care about signatures, account numbers, payment history, and my name was the one being punished. That evening, Marcus called. "Mom," he said, voice tight. "Aunt Keisha called me again." I closed my eyes. "What did she say?" "She said you're turning on her, and that you always hated her," he replied. I could hear him pacing through the phone. "She's trying to make me feel guilty for supporting you." My throat tightened. "What did you tell her?" "I told her the truth," Marcus said. "That she stole from you, and that I love her, but I'm not going to defend wrong." A soft ache moved through my chest, pride, mixed with sadness that my son had to carry any of this. "Thank you," I whispered. Marcus hesitated. "Mom, are you safe? Like, does she have a key to your place?" The question made my stomach drop because it was one I should have asked sooner. "She did," I admitted. "From when she stayed with me." Marcus exhaled hard. "Mom, change the locks." "I will," I promised. After we hung up, I called my apartment manager and requested a lock change. She gave me a date 2 days out. 2 days felt too long, but it was something. That night, I wedged a chair under the door handle like I was living in a movie, and I hated myself for needing to. In the morning, I got the call from Detective Ramos. "Ms. Walker," he said, "we've contacted the lender and obtained additional documentation. We also spoke with the dealership. The signatures appear inconsistent with yours." My chest tightened. "So what does that mean?" "It means we're moving forward," he said. "We're also attempting to locate the vehicle. If we find it, we can place a hold pending investigation." I swallowed. "She keeps moving it." There was a pause. "Do you know where she's staying now?" I hesitated, because the truth was I didn't know Keisha's life the way I used to pretend I did. But I did know one thing. "Across the street from my apartment," I said softly. Or she was. Detective Ramos told me not to confront her again. To let them handle it. To document, not engage. Promised. And I meant it. Until I didn't. Because that afternoon when I pulled into my apartment lot, I saw the silver Altima again. Parked crooked, half on the line like whoever parked it didn't care about anybody else's space. My heart started hammering. Not because I wanted to fight. Because I wanted proof. I sat in my car and took photos, license plate, temporary tag, VIN visible on the dashboard through the windshield. My hands shook as I zoomed in. Then I sent the photos to Detective Ramos with a simple message. "Car located. In my lot. Please advise." A few minutes later, he replied, "Do not approach. Units will attempt contact." I sat there breathing slow, watching the car like it was a loaded thing. 10 minutes passed. Then I saw Keisha come out of the building with Ramon. So Ramon was real. He was tall, lean, wearing a hoodie and a chain that caught the sunlight. He moved like a man who didn't fear being watched. Like consequences were always someone else's problem. Keisha laughed at something he said, tossing her head back like she didn't have a debt dragging my name through the mud. They walked toward the Altima and my stomach twisted. Not with jealousy, not with anger, but with that sharp sting of realization. While I was in police stations and HR offices, Keisha was still living like it was all going to blow over. Ramon opened the driver's door for her like she was a queen. Keisha slid into the seat. And that's when a patrol car turned into the lot. Then another. My breath caught. Keisha's head snapped up. Ramon froze mid-step like somebody hit pause on him. 2 officers approached calmly, hands visible, posture firm. No shouting. Just authority. Keisha stepped out slowly, her face already pulling into tears like she was preparing her performance. Ramon raised his hand slightly and started talking. Fast, animated, like he could charm his way out. I stayed in my car, window up, heart pounding so hard it felt like it was bruising my ribs. I watched Keisha point across the lot. Toward my building. Toward my car. Toward me. Even from a distance I could feel her trying to drag me into it, trying to make this a sister fight instead of a fraud investigation. One officer looked around, scanning, then walked toward my car. My stomach dropped. I stepped out slowly when he approached, keeping my hands visible just like I'd been taught. "Ms. Walker?" he asked. "Yes," I said, voice quiet. "I'm Officer Lane," he said. "Detective Ramos asked us to confirm the vehicle's location and make contact with Ms. Johnson." I nodded. My mouth was dry. He looked at me, expression neutral but not unkind. "Did you locate the vehicle and report it?" "Yes," I said. "I took photos of the plate and VIN." "All right," he said. "Please send those to the detective if you haven't." "I did," I replied. He nodded once, then lowered his voice slightly. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to stay back while we handle this. She's emotional." I almost laughed, but it stayed in my throat. "She's always emotional when she gets caught," I said quietly. Officer Lane didn't react. He just nodded like he understood exactly what I meant. Across the lot, I could see Keisha gesturing wildly now, her voice rising. Ramon kept stepping in, talking over her, trying to control the officers the way he probably controlled her. Then Keisha's head whipped around again and her eyes landed on me. Even from that distance I saw it. Not regret. Not sorrow. Betrayal. Like I'd wronged her by refusing to be her shield. She mouthed something I couldn't hear. But I could guess. "You did this." And she was right. I did. Because sometimes the only way to stop a fire is to stop pretending it's just warmth. Officer Lane walked back toward the patrol cars, and I stayed where I was, near the curb, arms folded tight across my chest, trying to look calm while my insides trembled like a humming wire. The parking lot smelled like hot asphalt and wet leaves. A breeze moved through the trees at the edge of the complex, shaking down a few tired drops of rain. Somewhere a dog barked like it was announcing trouble. Keisha's voice carried across the lot in sharp pieces. "I didn't steal nothing. She's lying. That's my sister. She always trying to control me." Ramon kept talking too fast and confident, the way men do when they think volume can replace innocence. One of the officers, Officer Lane's partner, asked for IDs. I watched Keisha dig through her purse, hands moving too quickly, like she wanted to create chaos on purpose. Then I saw her do something that made my stomach clench. She pulled out a folded piece of paper and waved it like a flag. "That's the paperwork right there," she shouted. She knew. She helped me. Officer Lane looked down at it briefly, then back at Keisha. His face didn't change, but his voice did, firm, flat. "Ma'am, lower your voice." Keisha didn't lower anything. She turned toward me and yelled, "Tell them you knew, Denise. Tell them you knew." My cheeks burned. Not because I was ashamed of the truth, but because I could feel everyone in the buildings nearby peeking through blinds, curiosity spreading like smoke. Officer Lane walked back to me, not rushed. "Ms. Walker," he said. "She's claiming you gave permission." I swallowed. My throat felt dry enough to crack. "I did not," I said clearly. "I have a police report. I have an FDC affidavit. I've been disputing this with the lender and credit bureaus. I've been getting collection calls. I didn't authorize anything." Officer Lane nodded once. "Do you have anything that shows you were not present at the time of purchase?" "Yes," I said, and my voice steadied when I spoke facts. work time records and HR letter. I also have texts from her acknowledging I went to the police. That's helpful, he said. Then he added quietly, don't worry about her performance. We deal in evidence. Performance. That word landed right. Because that's what this was for Keisha. A performance to stay out of consequence. The officers moved to the car next. One of them shined a flashlight through the windshield, leaning in to read the VIN. The other spoke into his radio. Keisha kept crying louder, now switching tones. Less angry, more wounded. You gonna do me like this in front of everybody? She sobbed. After Mama died, you all I had. I felt my chest tighten at my mother's name, like somebody had yanked a thread inside me. But I didn't step forward. I didn't defend myself. I didn't argue with tears. I just stood still because I'd learned something this month. If you keep stepping into the mess to explain yourself, you never get out of it. A few minutes later, I saw Ramon's posture change. One of the officers had run his information. Ramon stopped talking and started looking around, restless. Then Officer Lane's partner said, Sir, turn around. Ramon's face shifted, surprise first, then anger. For what? He demanded. Hands behind your back, the officer repeated. Keisha's crying stopped like someone shut off a faucet. What? She said, voice suddenly sharp. What are you doing? Ramon tried to pull his arm away, talking fast again. Man, I ain't, this ain't. The officer didn't wrestle him. He just applied pressure in a practice way and put cuffs on him. Keisha took a step back, eyes wide. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt something heavy and cold. Because seeing Ramon in cuffs confirmed what my gut already knew. This wasn't just Keisha being desperate. This was Keisha running with people who lived on the edge of other folks' lives. Officer Lane came back to me. Ms. Walker, he said, we're going to have the vehicle towed to an impound lot pending investigation. The detective will contact you about next steps. My breath caught. So it won't be repossessed? It won't be released to anyone today, he said carefully. And we'll document its condition and VIN. I nodded, swallowing hard. Thank you. He paused, then added, you might want to be prepared for retaliation. People who do this often blame the victim. I almost smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. She already does. Across the lot, Keisha was shouting again. You can't take my car, she screamed. That's my car. Officer Lane's partner answered calmly. It's not your car. It's financed under Denise Walker's name. Keisha's face twisted. She looked straight at me and said something I could hear this time, loud and clear. I hate you. The words hit me, but they didn't break me the way they would have a year ago. Because I finally understood. Keisha didn't hate me. She hated the boundary. She hated the consequence. She hated that her tears weren't working. I turned and walked toward my building without responding. My hands were shaking by the time I reached my door, but I forced myself to move slowly. Key in the lock, twist, push. Like I was teaching my nervous system how to be calm again. Inside, I leaned back against the door and listened to the muffled noise outside. The tow truck arriving, the chain clanking, Keisha's voice rising and falling like a siren. Then finally silence. My phone buzzed. Detective Ramos. I answered quickly. Hello. Ms. Walker, he said. I got your photos. Good work. Officers confirmed the vehicle. We're placing it on hold. Also, Ramon was taken in on an unrelated matter. Unrelated. I swallowed. So what happens with Keisha? There was a pause. She was interviewed, he said. She's not under arrest at this moment, but the case is moving. We're collecting dealership footage and finalizing document comparisons. I will likely need you to come sign additional statements. I will, I replied, voice firm. Whenever you need. Good, he said. And Denise, I know this is painful, but you're doing the right thing. When the call ended, I stared at my living room, my safe little space, and felt my body finally let out a long breath it had been holding for weeks. Then my phone buzzed again. Aunt Sheila. I answered, and before I could speak she said, Baby, I just heard. My throat tightened. How? She called me screaming, Aunt Sheila said, voice tired. Said you set her up. Said the police stole her car. I closed my eyes. They towed it because it's in my name. I know, Aunt Sheila said. I told her that. She cussed me out. that made my stomach twist. Sadness for the way Keisha burned every bridge she stood on. Anger at the way she tried to turn elders into shields. Aunt Sheila sighed. Denise, listen. Some of the family gonna say you should have handled it in the house. I leaned my head back against the wall. And what would that look like, Auntie? Me paying her car note forever. Aunt Sheila was quiet a beat. Exactly, she said softly. You handled it right. I swallowed and tears came up. Not falling yet, just sitting behind my eyes like pressure. Thank you, I whispered. Change your locks, she added immediately, back in practical mode. And don't open your door if she shows up. I already requested it, I said. After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table and opened my notebook again. Vehicle located. Police contact made. Vehicle towed/held. Keisha hostile. Ramon detained. Then I wrote something my mother used to tell me when I was a little girl and I'd come home crying because someone was mad at me for doing the right thing. Let them be mad. Just don't let them be right. That night I received an email from the lender. We have received your fraud documentation and police report. Collection activity has been paused pending investigation. Paused. Not fixed. But paused was a small mercy. Like someone finally put a hand out to stop the bleeding. I stood in my quiet kitchen and let myself feel that moment of relief. Then, as if life couldn't let me have peace for even one full hour, my phone rang again. Keisha. Blocked. So the call didn't come through. But the voicemail still arrived. I listened and her voice came through thick with rage. You think you won, she hissed. You think you took my car and that's it? I'm coming to get my stuff. And if you don't open that door, I'm gonna make sure everybody knows what kind of person you are. I sat very still, because that voicemail wasn't just anger. It was a threat, and it told me something I needed to know for what came next. Keisha wasn't going to accept accountability quietly, so I forwarded the voicemail to Detective Ramos, saved it in my evidence folder, and then I did the most painful thing a steady woman can do. I prepared for war without letting it make me bitter. I set my phone down, walked to my balcony, and looked out into the night where the silver Altima had been. Empty spot now. Just pavement and a streetlight. And I whispered into the dark, not as a prayer, more like a promise. You don't get to take my future and then punish me for fighting for it. The lock change couldn't come fast enough. For the next 2 days I moved through my apartment like I was living inside a warning. Checking the peephole before I opened the door, keeping my blinds angled just enough to let light in but not my whole life out. At work I kept my smile on, but it felt like something I was wearing for other people's comfort. My coworkers would ask, "You okay?" And I'd nod the way steady women nod, quick, quiet, like pain is a private thing you shouldn't set on the table. But at night, when the building got quiet and the hallway lights clicked off one by one, I felt it in my bones. Keisha knew where I lived, and she was angry enough to stop caring who saw her. The morning the maintenance guy came, I stood in the doorway watching him work like he was installing oxygen. He was a young man with tired eyes and a tool belt that clinked softly when he moved. He replaced the deadbolt, adjusted the strike plate, tested it twice. "Here you go," he said, handing me 2 fresh keys. The keys were heavier than I expected. Or maybe my hands were just finally understanding what safety costs. As soon as he left, I texted Marcus a picture of the new keys in my palm. "Locks changed." He replied right away. "Good. Proud of you." I stared at his message until my throat tightened. Then I set my phone down and went to wash dishes I didn't need to wash, just to keep my hands busy. That evening, right after I finished eating, there was a knock at my door. Not a polite knock. A knock with force behind it. My body went still. Another knock, harder. Then Keisha's voice, loud enough to bounce down the hallway. "Denise, open this door." I didn't move. I walked quietly to the peephole. Keisha stood out there in a black puffer jacket, hair pulled tight, eyes wild. She looked less like my sister and more like a stranger wearing my sister's face. And beside her, half a step behind, was Ramon's friend, I guessed. A man I didn't recognize, arms crossed, posture loose like he didn't belong to consequences either. My stomach clenched. Keisha pounded again. "I know you in there. Open up." I didn't answer. I pulled my phone out with steady hands and started recording. Just the audio at first. Miss Eldridge in HR had told me once, If it isn't documented, it didn't happen. I used to think that was sad. Now I thought it was survival. Keisha shouted. You got my stuff in there. You can't just keep my things because you mad. I stood with my back against the wall beside the door, breathing slow. She wasn't here for her things. She was here for control. Then her voice dropped into something almost sweet. Another tactic. Denise, come on sis, she called softer. Just talk to me. You don't gotta do me like this. That sweetness lasted maybe 5 seconds before it shattered again. Open the door, she screamed, and something hit the wood, her fist, or maybe her shoulder. I flinched despite myself. The man behind her muttered something I couldn't hear, and Keisha snapped back at him. Shut up. Then she looked straight into the peephole like she could see my eye pressed against it. I'm not leaving, she said slowly, loud and clear. You hear me? I'm not leaving until you open this door. My fingers tightened around my phone. I didn't want to call the police again. Not because I felt guilty. Because every call felt like another nail in the coffin of family. But I remembered Officer Lane's warning. Retaliation. And I remembered Detective Ramos's tone. Keep things in writing. Keep evidence. Don't engage. So I dialed 911. When the dispatcher answered, I kept my voice calm. My sister is outside my apartment door, I said. She's yelling, banging, and making threats. There's a second male with her. I'm inside. I don't feel safe. The dispatcher asked for my address, my name, descriptions. I gave them like I was reciting a grocery list because panic doesn't help you get protected. While I stayed on the line, Keisha kept escalating. You think you can block me? She yelled. You think you can hide behind police? You always been scary. Then she said something that made my breath catch. You want to act like I'm a criminal? Okay, I'm gonna show you what a problem really looks like. A loud crack followed, like something hard hitting the doorframe. I pressed my hand over my mouth, heart slamming against my ribs. The dispatcher's voice sharpened. Ma'am, are you hearing damage? Yes, I whispered. Yes. Within minutes I heard footsteps pounding up the stairs. Heavy, fast, purposeful. Keisha must have heard them too, because she started yelling louder. Like volume could convince the world she was right. 2 officers appeared in the hallway, and the energy changed immediately. Authority has a sound. It's not just the badge. It's the calm that doesn't match the chaos. Ma'am, one officer said firm. Step away from the door. Keisha's voice turned desperate. She stole my stuff. She stole my car. It's not your car, the officer replied. We've got an ongoing report connected to that vehicle. Now step back. I stayed inside until I heard the officer say, Ms. Walker, you can come to the door. When I opened it, I kept the chain on. My hands were steady, but my stomach felt like it was twisting itself into knots. Keisha's eyes snapped to me. For a split second, she looked like she might rush forward. But the officers stood between us. One officer asked me, Is this the person you reported? Yes, I said quietly. That's my sister. Keisha scoffed. Listen to her. Acting like I'm some stranger. The officer looked at Keisha. Ma'am, you need to leave. If you have property disputes, you handle them through legal channels. Not by banging on someone's door. Keisha's face tightened. So she can just take my stuff? The officer's voice stayed flat. Do you have proof you live here? Keisha hesitated. That hesitation was loud. Because Keisha never had stability long enough to prove it. The second man shifted, eyes darting. One officer asked him for ID. He gave it with a tight jaw. Keisha started crying again, big, dramatic, chin trembling. I don't have nobody, she sobbed. My own sister is doing me like this. I looked at her then, really looked. And I saw what I'd been refusing to see for years. Keisha didn't just want help. She wanted a place where consequences couldn't reach her. And I had been that place. Not anymore. The officer turned back to me. Ms. Walker, would you like to pursue a no trespass order? Yes, I said without hesitation. Keisha's head snapped up. What? I kept my voice calm. Yes. The officer nodded and began explaining the process. Keisha started yelling again, calling me names that tried to crawl under my skin. But nothing she said landed the same way now. Because I wasn't debating my worth with someone who could steal my identity and still feel like the victim. The officers walked her down the stairs. Her voice echoed through the hallway the whole way, until the door at the bottom opened and closed and her noise finally got sealed outside. When the hallway was quiet again, one officer looked at my doorframe and frowned. "There's damage here," he said, pointing to a fresh crack in the trim. "I heard something hit it," I said. He nodded. "Take pictures. Add it to your report." After they left, I locked my door. Deadbolt, chain, everything, and slid to the floor with my back against it. I didn't cry. I just sat there breathing, listening to my own apartment like it was a new place. My phone buzzed. A text from Aunt Sheila. "Keisha just called me screaming. She said you called police on her again. You okay?" I stared at the message, then typed slowly. "I'm okay. But I'm done being her shield." Aunt Sheila replied. "Good. That's not your job." I set the phone down and looked at the crack in my doorframe. Small damage, but symbolic. Because even when I locked her out, she still tried to break into my space, my peace, my future. I took photos of the damage, and emailed them to Detective Ramos. Then I opened my notebook and wrote the date, the time, and one sentence that felt like a turning point. Keisha came to my home with a man. Police removed her. No trespass requested. And underneath that, I wrote what I needed to remember when guilt tried to visit later. Boundaries are not betrayal. They are protection. The morning after Keisha showed up at my door, my whole body felt like it had been clenched all night. My jaw was sore. My shoulders sat high like they didn't trust gravity. Even my hands looked tired. Knuckles dry, nails bitten down from weeks of quiet stress I pretended I wasn't carrying. I went to work anyway. Because when your life starts slipping, you hold tighter to anything that still feels normal. But by 9:15 a.m., I realized normal wasn't coming back on its own. Ms. Eldridge from HR called me into her office. She didn't look alarmed, just focused. "Denise," she said gently, "campus security got the heads up. If anyone comes here asking for you or causing a scene, they'll escort them out. But I need you to tell me plainly, are you in danger?" I swallowed. I thought of Keisha's face at my peephole, the crack in my door frame, the man behind her standing too comfortable in my hallway. "I don't think she's going to hurt me physically," I said carefully. "But she's escalating. And she's not respecting boundaries." Ms. Eldridge nodded like she understood exactly the kind of danger that is, one that doesn't leave bruises, but still leaves damage. "Okay," she said. "Then we treat it like a safety issue. Keep us updated. And if you need time off for court or police appointments, we'll work with you." My throat tightened. "Thank you." After I left her office, I sat at my desk and tried to answer emails, but my attention kept drifting back to my phone. Because the thing about family betrayal is this. It doesn't just attack your finances. It attacks your peace. It turns every quiet moment into a moment where you're listening for the next knock. At lunch, Detective Ramos called. "Ms. Walker," he said, "I received your voicemail and the photos of the door damage. I'm adding it to the file." "Thank you," I replied. He paused, then said, "We've also obtained dealership footage from the day of purchase." My stomach tightened. "And it shows someone presenting ID matching your information," he said, careful. "But the individual is not you." My breath caught. For a moment I couldn't speak. Detective Ramos continued, "We're proceeding with charges. It may take time for the paperwork, but you should prepare for the possibility that your sister will be formally arrested or summoned." The word charges landed heavy, even though I'd been moving toward it for weeks. "Okay," I whispered. "And Denise," he added, voice softer, "do not negotiate with her privately at this stage. If she contacts you, document and report." "I will," I said, and this time I meant it without hesitation. When I hung up, I sat very still and looked around my office, my pens lined up, my calendar neatly filled in, my small plant on the windowsill. My life had always been tidy. Not perfect, but tidy. And now my sister's choices were dragging that tidiness into courtrooms and police files. That evening, I stopped by Aunt Sheila's house. Not for a family meeting. Not for drama. Just because I needed to sit somewhere my mother's name still felt safe. Aunt Sheila opened the door and pulled me into a hug before I could even say hello. Her arms were warm, firm, like she was holding me up without making a speech about it. She smelled like cocoa butter and onions because she'd been cooking again. The kitchen was full of steam and comfort. You look worn out, baby, she murmured. I am, I admitted. She poured me a glass of sweet tea and sat across from me at her kitchen table, the same table where my mother used to sit laughing, fanning herself in the summer. Aunt Sheila's eyes narrowed. Keisha came by here earlier, she said. My stomach tightened. What did she want? Aunt Sheila made a small bitter sound. To cry. To blame you. To try and make me say you're wrong. And I asked quietly. Aunt Sheila leaned forward. And I told her something your mama used to tell y'all when you were little. I waited. Aunt Sheila said. I told her. You can be loved and still be wrong. My throat tightened so hard I had to look down at my glass. Aunt Sheila continued. She didn't like that. I'm sure she didn't, I whispered. Then Aunt Sheila did something that surprised me. She reached into a drawer and pulled out a small envelope. Your mama left this, she said, sliding it across the table. My chest tightened. What is it? A letter, Aunt Sheila said softly. She wrote little notes sometimes, for if anything happens. You know your mama. Always preparing. I stared at the envelope like it might explode. My mother had been gone 4 years, but grief is strange. It waits in corners, then steps out when you least expect it. My hand shook as I opened it. Inside was a single piece of paper folded neatly. My mother's handwriting, round, familiar, met my eyes like a touch. Denise, it began. If you're reading this, then I'm not there to tell you myself. You've always been the steady one. But don't let steady turn into silent suffering. Some people will lean on you until your spine hurts, then call you selfish when you stand up straight. Love people, baby, but love yourself too. I pressed my lips together hard. Tears rose hot and sudden. Aunt Sheila watched me quietly, not rushing me. At the bottom, my mother had written one more line. And don't let your sister make you carry her choices. I covered my mouth with my hand. A sound escaped me, half laugh, half sob, because it felt like my mother was still mothering me from the other side. She knew, I whispered. Aunt Sheila nodded slowly. She always knew Keisha would test boundaries, she said. She just hoped life would teach her gentler than this. I folded the letter carefully and put it back in the envelope like it was something holy. When I got home, my phone was full of notifications. Keisha had posted on Facebook a long status full of tears in text form. I learned today you can't trust nobody, not even your own blood. Some people will smile in your face and call the cops on you behind your back. Pray for me. I'm being attacked. The comments were already filling up, some people comforting her, some asking questions. I stared at the screen until my eyes burned. Then I did something I never do. I didn't respond. I didn't defend myself online. Because I realized, the internet is where accountability goes to get drowned. Instead, I screenshotted it and sent it to Detective Ramos. Not because Facebook drama is a crime, because it showed her pattern of intimidation and manipulation. Then I blocked her. Fully. Phone. Social media. Email. Every door closed. That night, my apartment was quiet in a way that felt new. Not lonely, just uncluttered by her noise. The next day, an email came from the lender. Investigation update. We have determined the account may involve fraud. We are working to remove negative reporting pending final confirmation. May involve fraud. But it was the first time the system had said something that sounded like belief. I sat at my kitchen table, the letter from my mother beside my coffee mug, and felt something loosen in my chest for the first time in weeks. Then my phone rang. Marcus. Mom, he said, voice careful. I got a call from Aunt Keisha. I closed my eyes. What did she say? She asked me for money, he said. Said she needs a lawyer. Said you're trying to destroy her. My stomach tightened but my voice stayed calm. And what did you say? I told her no, Marcus replied. I told her if she needs help, she needs to tell the truth, not ask me to fund more lies. My throat tightened. Thank you. Marcus hesitated. Mom, are you okay with her getting arrested? The question landed like a hand on my chest. Because this was the part nobody prepares you for. The moment justice stops being an idea and becomes a real consequence for someone whose face you've known your whole life. I sat very still. I'm not okay with any of this, I said honestly. But I'm okay with not paying for her choices. I'm okay with the truth having somewhere to go. Marcus exhaled slowly. I love you. I love you too, I whispered. After we hung up, I walked to my front door and looked at the crack in the trim again. Still there, a small scar. I touched it lightly with my fingertips and thought, this is what happens when you stop being the soft place people land. They start trying to break the door. But a broken door frame can be repaired. A broken future is harder. That evening, I got one more call, this time from an unknown number, but the voice was familiar the moment I answered. It was Keisha. She must have used someone else's phone. Denise, she said, and her tone was different, quieter, tired. They gonna charge me? I didn't answer right away. Keisha sniffed. You got what you wanted. I held the phone gently like it was something fragile. I wanted my name back, I said softly. I wanted my life back. Keisha's voice cracked, and for a second I heard the little sister under the mess. I didn't mean for it to go this far. I swallowed. It went as far as you took it. There was a long silence. Then Keisha whispered almost like a child, I'm scared. I closed my eyes, and in that moment I made a decision that hurt but felt clean. I hope you tell the truth, I said quietly. But I can't save you from consequences. Not anymore. Keisha let out a small sob. So you really done with me? I opened my eyes and stared at my living room. My quiet, my safety, my mother's letter on the table. I'm done being used, I said. That's different. I ended the call before my voice could soften into a promise I couldn't keep. And as I stood there in my quiet apartment, I realized something I didn't expect. Choosing yourself doesn't always feel empowering in the moment. Sometimes it just feels like finally putting down something heavy you were never meant to carry. 2 weeks after that last phone call, my life started to feel like it was being run by calendars I didn't choose. Court dates, case numbers, investigation updates, letters in the mail with bold headers and thin paper that crinkles too loud in a quiet apartment. Detective Ramos called on a Tuesday morning, while I was stirring oatmeal on the stove. The spoon clinked against the pot, small, domestic, while his voice carried the kind of news that changes families. Ms. Walker, he said, the prosecutor approved charges. Your sister will be issued a summons. She'll have to appear. My hand went still over the pot. The oatmeal bubbled once, then spat softly like it was warning me not to leave it unattended. Okay, I whispered. We also identified the male you saw with her, he continued. He's connected to other fraud complaints. That supports your report. I swallowed. So this is real. It's real, Detective Ramos said. And I want you prepared. She may try to contact you through family or friends. Don't engage. Let the court handle it. After we hung up, I turned off the stove and sat at my table for a long time, staring at the untouched bowl. In my head, I kept seeing Keisha at 8 years old. Knees ashy, hair in braids, running into the kitchen crying because she'd broken a vase and didn't want Mama to find out. Back then, I'd stepped in front of her like a shield. Please, I'd begged. I'll clean it up. I didn't know I was practicing for the rest of my life. The day the summons arrived, Aunt Sheila called first. They're saying Keisha got papers, she said quietly. My throat tightened. Yeah. Aunt Sheila sighed. She's at my house. I sat very still. Is she okay? She's scared, Aunt Sheila replied. But she's still blaming you. That part didn't surprise me anymore. Fear doesn't automatically create humility. Sometimes it just creates louder excuses. That evening, Aunt Sheila called again and put Keisha on speaker without warning me first. Denise, Keisha said, voice hoarse, I got court. I didn't answer right away. Keisha continued. They saying I could go to jail. Aunt Sheila cut in, sharp and tired. Keisha, stop acting shocked like you didn't sign your sister's name. Keisha's breath hitched. I'm asking Denise to help me. To tell them she don't want to press charges. My chest tightened, not just with anger, but with that old painful instinct to rescue. Because it's hard to watch someone drown, even when they jumped into the water with your shoes on. But then I remembered my mother's letter. Don't let your sister make you carry her choices. I can't do that, I said quietly. Keisha's voice rose instantly. So you just gonna let them take me? I didn't take you anywhere, I replied calm. You walked there. You signed there. You spent there. Keisha sobbed. I said I was sorry. The silence that followed felt heavy, because Keisha had never actually said sorry to me, Not in a way that included accountability. She'd cried. She'd yelled. She'd blamed. She'd said she was scared. But sorry is a different thing. Keisha, I said softly, if you were sorry, you would have come to me before the collections calls. You would have returned the car yourself. You would have told the lender the truth. You would have stopped calling me cold for protecting my future. Keisha's crying turned into anger. You think you so righteous. I swallowed the ache in my throat. No, I said. I think I'm tired. Aunt Sheila spoke then, voice gentler. Baby, you need a lawyer and you need the truth. That's it. Keisha sniffed hard. So Denise really don't love me. I closed my eyes. That sentence was a trap, one she'd used on me since we were teenagers. This time I stepped around it. I love you, I said. But I don't trust you. And love doesn't require me to lie for you. Keisha went quiet. And in that quiet, something in me finally unclenched, because I'd said the truth without apologizing for it. The court date came and I went because Detective Ramos told me it mattered, and because part of healing is refusing to hide from the consequences of somebody else's choices. The courthouse smelled like old paper and floor polish. The benches were hard. People whispered like the air itself had rules. Keisha sat on the opposite side in a wrinkled blouse, hair pulled back too tight, eyes swollen like she'd been crying for days. For a second, she looked less like the sister who shouted outside my door, and more like a woman realizing the world doesn't bend because she's upset. When she saw me, her face twisted, hurt, anger, and something else underneath. Shame, maybe. The prosecutor read the charges plainly: identity theft, fraud-related counts tied to the auto loan, and attempted refinance inquiry. Keisha's public defender spoke about hardship, about bad decisions, about family. I listened, hands folded in my lap, my heart steady in a way it hadn't been at the beginning. Because I wasn't there to punish her. I was there to be counted as real. Afterward, in the hallway, Keisha's eyes found mine. She took a step forward like she wanted to speak, then stopped, like she remembered the no trespass order, like she remembered the police standing between us. She whispered, I never thought you'd let it go this far. I looked at her and answered quietly, I never thought you'd take it this far. She flinched like my calmness hurt more than yelling would have. On the way home, my phone buzzed with an email from one of the credit bureaus. Dispute result. Account marked as fraud. Negative reporting removed pending final resolution. I stared at the words until my eyes blurred. Removed. Not erased from memory. Not undone emotionally. But removed from my financial future. When I got home, I sat in my quiet apartment and let myself feel relief, real relief, for the first time in a long time. The kind that makes your shoulders drop. The kind that makes breathing easier. That night, I didn't light the lemon candle. I didn't need to create peace. I could feel it, small and fragile, sitting in the room with me. And I understood the lesson I wish I'd learned sooner. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do, for yourself and for the person who keeps harming you, is stop rescuing them from the consequences that might finally teach them. After that first court date, time started moving in a new way, slow in my body, fast on paper. Weeks passed, but they didn't feel like weeks. They felt like envelopes and email notifications. Like waiting rooms and, your call is important to us. Like waking up calm one morning and then feeling your stomach drop by lunch because a new letter arrived. Keisha's case didn't end in one dramatic day. It stretched, continuances, paperwork, meetings with her public defender, more requests from the detective. Every step was its own little grief. And the strangest part was how ordinary my life looked from the outside while all of this was happening. I still went to work. I still made coffee. I still answered emails with exclamation points like my world wasn't held together by documentation. But inside, I was living by rules I didn't have before. Don't assume the truth will speak for itself. Don't assume family will be fair. Don't assume tears mean remorse. One afternoon, Detective Ramos called and asked me to come in again, this time to review a timeline. He spread papers across the table. Printed screenshots, dealership records, timestamps, and a still image from the dealership camera. The photo showed a woman at the finance desk, head tilted down, pen in hand. It wasn't me. The posture was wrong. The hair was wrong. Even the way she held the pen looked like somebody trying to perform confidence. Detective Ramos tapped the image lightly. She used your ID, he said. But this confirms the person present wasn't you. My throat tightened, even though that's what I'd been saying all along. There's also evidence of attempted refinancing, he added. The inquiry you found wasn't random. I swallowed. So she was going to keep using me. He didn't answer with emotion. He answered with fact. Yes. When I walked out of the station, I sat in my car for a long time, hands resting on the steering wheel, and tried to accept what that meant. It wasn't just one desperate decision. It was a pattern forming. And patterns don't stop because you beg nicely. They stop when they hit a wall. A month later, the lender's final determination came through. I was at home in my apartment when the email arrived, and I stared at the subject line like it might be a trap. Final investigation result. Fraud confirmed. My hands shook when I opened it. They wrote it in clean corporate language, no drama, no empathy, just resolution. The account would be closed as fraudulent. The delinquency would be removed from my credit profile. I would not be responsible for the debt. The lender would pursue recovery through legal channels. I read it twice. Then I covered my mouth and cried. Quietly, shoulders shaking, the kind of crying that comes when your body finally believes it can unclench. Not because my sister being exposed felt good. Because my name was finally being released. My future stopped bleeding. I called Marcus right away. He answered and I didn't even say hello properly. It's confirmed, I said, voice trembling. They confirmed it was fraud. They're removing it. Marcus exhaled like he'd been holding air for me from another state. Thank God, he whispered. I'm so proud of you, Mom. I sat down on the edge of my bed and stared at the wall while I talked to him. I didn't feel brave, I admitted. I felt sick. Most of the time. That's what bravery feels like, Marcus said. You did it anyway. After we hung up, I pulled out my notebook, the one that started as a way to calm my mind, and flipped back through the dates. The early pages were full of confusion. Phone calls, loan numbers, questions. The later pages were full of facts. Police report numbers, officer names, screenshots, damage to my door frame, credit freezes. It was a record of a woman becoming someone harder to trick. A few weeks after that, the criminal case reached its turning point. Keisha took a plea. Not because she suddenly discovered morality, but because the evidence was heavy enough to crush any story she tried to tell. Aunt Sheila called me the day she found out. She signed, Aunt Sheila said quietly. She took a deal. Probation. Restitution. Fraud class. No contact order with you unless you agree. I closed my eyes and let the words settle. Probation. Restitution. No contact. It sounded like justice in plain clothes. She keeps saying she's sorry, Aunt Sheila added, and I could hear the skepticism in her voice. I didn't answer right away. Because sorry is a complicated word when it shows up late. Is she sorry for what she did? I asked softly. Or sorry she got caught? Aunt Sheila was quiet for a beat. Then she said, honest, I don't know yet. Neither did I. On the day of sentencing, I went again. Not because I wanted to watch my sister fall. Because I wanted to stand up one more time in a room that mattered and say I was harmed and I didn't deserve it. The courtroom was colder than I remembered. Air-conditioned like feelings weren't welcome there. Keisha stood with her lawyer, hair pulled back, eyes swollen. When she looked at me, her expression flickered. Something like shame, something like anger, something like grief. Maybe all three. The judge spoke plainly. He asked Keisha if she understood what she did. He asked if she understood the consequences. He laid out restitution and conditions with the calm authority of someone who has seen too many families break over money and entitlement. Then he asked me if I wanted to speak. I stood slowly. My voice didn't shake. I think by then I'd spent all my shaking already. Your Honor, I said. I'm not here because I wanted to punish my sister. I'm here because she punished me first, quietly in my name behind my back. I paused and looked at my hands, then back up. She took something people don't understand until it's gone, I continued. She took my safety. She took my peace. She took my ability to answer the phone without fear. I glanced at Keisha for the first time, just briefly. And I want the court to know, I said. I didn't do this because I stopped loving her. I did this because I started loving myself enough to stop enabling harm. When I sat down, my chest felt lighter. Not happy, not celebratory. Just lighter. Afterward, outside the courthouse, Aunt Sheila hugged me tightly. "You did right," she whispered into my hair. I nodded, eyes stinging. "I hate that it had to be this way." "So do I," she said. "But you didn't choose it. You answered it." That night, back in my apartment, I did something simple. I logged into my credit monitoring account and watched the changes update, one by one, like bruises fading in slow motion. And when the score finally corrected, I didn't feel proud in a loud way. I felt grateful in a quiet way, because I'd learned the hard truth. You can do everything right and still be harmed by someone you love. But you can also fight your way back to stability without becoming cruel. I made myself tea, sat at my table, and wrote one final line for that chapter in my notebook. I chose truth over enabling, and I survived the fallout. After sentencing, life didn't suddenly become peaceful. It became quieter. There's a difference. Peace is something you feel in your body. Quiet is just the absence of noise. And for a while my life was quiet the way a room gets quiet after a storm. Still damp, still scattered, but no longer shaking. The first restitution payment came in the mail 2 weeks later. A plain white envelope with Keisha's handwriting on the front. My stomach tightened the moment I recognized it. Her handwriting has always leaned a little too far to the right, like she was rushing even when she wasn't. I stood at my mailbox for a full minute with that envelope in my hand, breathing slow, my thumb pressing lightly against the paper like I could feel her intentions through it. Back upstairs, I set it on my kitchen table and made coffee first, because I've learned not to open certain things without something warm nearby. Not because coffee fixes pain, but because it reminds me I'm still allowed comfort. When I finally opened the envelope, there was a money order inside and a short note written on loose-leaf paper. "Denise," it said. "I'm paying what they told me. I know you don't want to talk to me. I'm sorry for real. I was wrong. That was it. No excuses. No, but you know what I was going through. No blaming Mama's death. No blaming me for being cold." It was the cleanest apology Keisha had ever attempted. And still, my chest didn't soften the way it would have years ago. Because the harm was bigger than the note. I endorsed the money order the way Ms. Eldridge in HR taught me to sign anything official. Slow, careful, on purpose. I copied it from my records, attached it to my folder, and logged the payment date in my notebook. Then I placed Keisha's note back in the envelope and filed it too. Not as a trophy. As a reminder that even apologies need accountability behind them to mean something. That same week, Aunt Sheila invited me to Sunday dinner. Not a meeting. Not a "we need to talk." Just dinner. Her house smelled like cornbread and greens when I walked in, and for the first time in a long time the smell didn't make me ache. It made me feel held. The family was smaller than usual. Just Aunt Sheila, Uncle James, and Tori. No Keisha. The air felt calmer without the tension of her presence. Nobody was performing. Nobody was tiptoeing around the truth. We ate at the same table where my mother used to sit, laughing so hard she'd slap the tabletop and say, "Lord, y'all gonna make me choke." Aunt Sheila looked at me over her glasses and said, "How you sleeping, baby?" I paused, honest. "Better," I said. "Not perfect, but better." Uncle James nodded slowly. "That door incident would have messed with me," he said. "I'm glad you changed your locks." I swallowed. "Me too." Tori reached for the sweet tea pitcher and said quietly, "I didn't know family could do that to you." I met her eyes. "Sometimes family is the only one who can," I said softly, "because they already know where your soft spots are." After dinner, Aunt Sheila walked me to the door and pressed a small container into my hands. "Leftovers wrapped tight. You come back whenever you want," she said. I nodded, my throat tight. "Thank you, Auntie." She touched my cheek the way my mother used to, warm and steady. "Your mama would be proud," she murmured. "Not because Keisha got in trouble, but because you stopped letting trouble live in your house." On the drive home, the streetlights looked softer than usual, halos on wet pavement. My apartment didn't feel like a place I was hiding anymore. Felt like a place I was healing. Over the next few months, my credit stabilized fully. The fraud marker stayed in place. My account stayed locked down. The calls stopped. The dread that used to hit my chest every time my phone rang started to fade into the background like a sound you don't notice anymore. I started doing small things again. I bought a new plant for my balcony. Something stubborn that doesn't need much, like me. I hung one framed photo of my mother near the kitchen. I stopped checking my credit report every morning and reduced it to once a week, then once a month. And one night I realized I hadn't wedged a chair under my door in weeks. That's how healing shows up sometimes. Not as a big moment, as a habit you no longer need. Marcus came to visit in the spring. He walked into my apartment, looked around at my tidy space, and pulled me into a hug that lasted longer than it needed to. "You okay for real?" he asked into my shoulder. I pulled back and looked at his face. My son's face, the one I raised to recognize truth even when it's uncomfortable. "For real," I said. "I'm okay." He nodded, eyes glossy, then smiled small. "I knew you would be." We spent the weekend doing ordinary things. Eating takeout, laughing at an old movie, walking through a park where kids were running and couples were pushing strollers. At one point, sitting on a bench in the sunlight, Marcus asked softly, "Do you think you'll ever talk to Aunt Keisha again?" I stared out at the trees swaying gently, leaves whispering to each other. "I don't know," I said honestly. "I don't want revenge. I don't want a feud. But I also don't want access to my life to be the reward for hurting me." Marcus nodded slowly. "That makes sense." I took a breath. If I ever speak to her again, it'll be after time. After consistency. After she's done more than say sorry. After she's lived sorry. Marcus looked at me like he was proud and sad at the same time. "You taught me that," he said. That night after he left, I sat at my kitchen table with my notebook open. Not because I needed evidence anymore, but because I'd gotten used to telling myself the truth on paper. I wrote one last lesson at the bottom of the page, slow and careful. Family can be loved and still be kept at a distance. I closed the notebook, turned off the light, and stood in my doorway for a moment listening to the quiet. Not the quiet of fear. The quiet of a life that finally belonged to me again. Spring turned into early summer, and the world kept blooming like nothing had happened. Some mornings I'd step onto my balcony with my coffee and watch the sun climb over the building across the way, bright and shameless. Birds would argue in the trees like they owned the day. Somebody's radio would play softly from a passing car. And in those moments I'd feel it. How strange it is to rebuild a life that looks normal again while your heart still remembers the abnormal. One Thursday, Aunt Sheila called me around dinner time. Her voice sounded careful, the way it does when she's holding something fragile. "Denise," she said, "Keisha asked me to ask you something." I didn't speak right away. I just stood at my kitchen counter, staring at the pot I'd been rinsing, water running over my fingers. "What?" I asked softly. "She wants to meet," Aunt Sheila said. "Just once. In public. She said she don't want to argue. She said she wants to apologize the right way." My chest tightened. Aunt Sheila rushed to add, "And baby, I told her I wasn't calling you to pressure you. I'm calling you to give you the choice." I turned off the faucet. The sudden silence in my kitchen felt loud. For a long moment I didn't answer because I was listening to myself. Not to guilt. Not to fear. To truth. "I don't know," I said finally. "I don't want to open a door that took me months to lock." "I understand," Aunt Sheila said quietly. "But I also know you. You don't like loose ends." I swallowed. She was right. I don't. Not because I need closure from other people, but because I don't like carrying old conversations around in my chest. "If I do it," I said slowly, "it has to be on my terms." Aunt Sheila didn't hesitate. "Good," she said. "That's how it should be." So I thought about it for 2 days. I talked to Marcus. He didn't push me either way. He just said, "Do what protects your peace, Mom." And then I made a decision that felt both brave and cautious. I agreed to meet Keisha for 20 minutes at a busy cafe near the courthouse. Neutral territory, public, cameras, people around. I told Aunt Sheila I wouldn't meet anywhere private, and I wouldn't be alone in a parking lot to talk. Keisha agreed. That alone told me something had shifted, because old Keisha would have demanded comfort and control. New Keisha, if she was new, was at least willing to follow rules. On the day of the meeting, I wore a simple cream blouse and jeans. No jewelry except my watch. My hair pulled back. Nothing about me needed to be loud. My boundaries would speak for me. I arrived early and chose a table near the window. The cafe smelled like warm sugar and espresso. A blender whirred behind the counter. People talked in low voices, tapping at laptops, living their normal lives. When Keisha walked in, I almost didn't recognize her. She looked smaller, like the last few months had humbled her body the way consequences humble a person's pride. No shiny lip gloss. No dramatic sunglasses. Just a plain t-shirt under a light jacket, hair pulled back, face bare. She spotted me and hesitated. Then she walked over slowly and sat down across from me. For a moment we just looked at each other. Sisters. Strangers. History sitting between us like a third chair. Keisha cleared her throat. Thank you for meeting me. I nodded once. I'm here. She clasped her hands on the table. Her fingers trembled a little. I'm not gonna make excuses, she said quietly. I did it. I was wrong. I didn't respond right away. I watched her face waiting for the but. It didn't come. Keisha swallowed. I've been going to a program, she added. They made me take a financial responsibility class. And I've been talking to a counselor too. I nodded slowly. Good. Her eyes filled, but she blinked hard like she was trying not to perform tears in public. I didn't understand how deep it was, she whispered. I thought it was just a car. I thought you'd be mad. Then you'd fix it like you always do. That sentence hit like truth. Because it wasn't just about her desperation. It was about her certainty that I would absorb the cost. I did fix it, I said calmly. But not the way you want it. Keisha flinched. I know. She reached into her bag and slid something across the table toward me. An envelope. I know you don't want nothing from me, she said quickly. But I wrote this apology the way my counselor told me to. Like saying what I did and what it cost you. I stared at the envelope but didn't touch it. Keisha's voice shook. You don't have to read it now. Or ever. I wanted to say it without trying to talk my way out. I took a slow breath. Keisha, I'm going to be honest with you. She nodded. I don't know if I can trust you again, I said. And I'm not going to pretend that your apology erases the fear I felt in my own home. Keisha's eyes dropped to the table. I know. But, I continued, I also don't want to carry hatred. Hatred ties you to the person who harmed you. And I worked too hard to be free. Keisha's lips trembled. So what does that mean? I leaned back slightly. It means I can forgive you in my heart without giving you access to my life. Her breath hitched. I kept my voice gentle but firm. You can keep making restitution. You can keep doing your work. And maybe one day we can be in the same room without pain running the show. Keisha whispered. You think that's possible? I paused. Then I told her the truth. It depends on who you become when nobody is watching, I said. Keisha nodded slowly. A tear slid down her cheek, and she wiped it away quickly. I'm sorry, Denise, she said, and this time the words didn't sound like fear. They sounded like understanding. I finally reached for the envelope and slipped it into my bag without opening it. I'm going to go, I said, standing. I'm glad you said what you said. But I'm not ready for more. Keisha stood too, hands at her sides, shoulders slumped. Okay, she whispered. Thank you for coming. I nodded once and walked out. Outside, the sun was warm on my face. The air smelled like car exhaust and cut grass. People crossed the street holding iced coffees, laughing, living. I sat in my car for a moment before starting it, breathing slowly. And I realized something important. Healing isn't always reconciliation. Sometimes healing is simply being able to look at what happened and say, that was wrong. That hurt me. And I survived it without becoming it. That night I opened Keisha's envelope. Her handwriting filled the page. And for once it didn't feel rushed. It felt deliberate. She wrote about how she used my social, how she lied, how she blamed me, how she tried to intimidate me. She named it. She didn't soften it. And at the bottom she wrote one line that made my eyes burn. I'm sorry I used your steadiness like it was mine to spend. I set the letter down and placed my palm over it. Not to forgive her fully. Just to acknowledge the truth had finally arrived in her hands. I made tea, sat at my table, and looked around my quiet apartment, the place that had held me through the storm. Then I wrote one last thing in my notebook, a lesson I wished every woman could keep in her pocket. Some people will call you heartless when you stop letting them break your heart. And in that quiet I felt it again, not loud happiness, but something steadier. Peace. If you've listened this far, then you already know this wasn't really about a car. The car was just the loud part. The real betrayal was quieter. My sister believing my name was something she could borrow, my peace was something she could spend, and my future was something I would always fix for her. And I'll be honest, the hardest part wasn't filling out forms or talking to detectives. The hardest part was standing in front of family and letting them see the truth, even when it made the room uncomfortable. Because so many of us were raised to think keeping the peace is the same thing as keeping our dignity. It's not. Dignity doesn't mean silence. Dignity means you tell the truth without becoming cruel. I didn't report my sister because I hated her. I reported her because I finally understood that love without boundaries turns into permission, and permission is how people keep hurting you while still calling you family. And for anyone out there who's dealing with something similar, I want you to hear this clearly. If your gut keeps whispering that something isn't right, listen. If you need receipts, ask. If you need to protect your name, do it. You're not cold for choosing yourself. You're not selfish for refusing to pay for someone else's choices. And you don't have to set yourself on fire to keep the family warm. Would you have reported your own sister? Or would you have handled it in the house? Tell me in the comments. And if you want more real, first-person stories about family betrayal, hard boundaries, and healing, subscribe and stay with me.